Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. As the Middle East crisis enters its third week, there is still no clear sign of de-escalation. The fighting is no longer confined to a direct U.S. Israel-Iran confrontation, with strikes now reaching Lebanon and parts of the Gulf as well. U.S. President Donald Trump is signaling a stronger round of attacks this week, while Iran continues missile and drone operations against Israel and Gulf targets. At the same time, tensions around the Strait of Hormuz are raising fresh fears over oil shipments and global energy prices. With casualties rising across the region and major powers still divided over how far to get involved, the question now is no longer whether this conflict is expanding, but how much further it could go. For a closer look into the situation, we connect with Mohammad Gouda, professor of Middle East economics at Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. A big welcome, Professor.
Thank you so much.
And also joining us online is Kyun Koo, professor at Seoul National University Asia Center. Good to see you, Professor.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start a discussion with Professor Koo. So like I've said, this crisis, it's entered its third week, and just hours ago, Israel's defense ministry claimed Iran's top security official Ali Larijani has been killed, a move that could further heighten tensions. How would you read into the overall situation right now?
Thank you. Yes, the news just, breaking just about an hour ago about Ali Larijani make this moment even more significant than it already was. What we are witnessing is a conflict that has gone far beyond what almost anyone predicted when it began 3 weeks ago on February 28th. The initial assumption was that this would be sharp, concentrated, and relatively short. The assumption has been proven completely wrong. The first thing that defines this conflict is the systematic decapitation of Iran's leadership. We began with the killing of a supreme leader, Khamenei, on the very first day of the war. Since then, senior figures have been eliminated one by one. And now, just hours before we came on air, Israel claimed the killing of Ali Larijani, who had effectively been running Iran's day-to-day operations since Khamenei's death, and was widely described as Iran's de facto wartime leader. Israel also claims to kill Gholam Reza Soleimani, the commander of the Basiji force, the internal militia used to suppress protest. So Iran has not yet confirmed either claim, but if true, this is a single most significant strike on Iranian leadership since the war began. So yeah, it is longer than we expected, and it became stronger and stronger than we expected.
Right, definitely. So the situation seems to be becoming more and more concerning as we see it. Now, when we pick upon that, Professor Gouda, as we look at the targets, Iran is now attacking not only Israel, but also areas linked to Gulf states, while Israel continues strikes in Iran and Lebanon. What does that widening battlefield tell us about the stage this conflict has reached?
Actually, it tells us that what started a couple of years ago with the 7th of October is more or less continuing. We have, I think all of us witnessed Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel saying that he will reshape the Middle East, and this is what's happening actually. So I think this is more of it's not a random escalation, but rather a controlled regional escalation. Israel is reshaping the Middle East with the help, of course, of U.S. From the point of view of U.S. and Israel, this is, we should have a new Middle East, according to President Trump. From Iran's side, this war is also raising, it tries to raise the cost for the whole region by, targeting Gulf countries, energy markets, and global economic stability. So we have a real escalation trap happening here. So each response leads to a broader counter response, and this increase we could have a wider regional war, as we are seeing now in Lebanon, and we're seeing now in Iraq, and we're seeing now we'll start to see it sooner or later also perhaps more in Gulf countries and other Gulf countries. So this is not random escalation, but rather a strategic calculated expansion. The problem is that this conflict expands, controls becomes harder and harder. So we need to wait and see, and really to figure out how all this war and escalation going to end. And I think it will be very hard to figure out how it's going to end at the end of the day.
Definitely. So we're seeing this battlefield widen day by day. Now, the economic shock, of course, becomes much harder to contain with the Strait of Hormuz disrupted and attacks on tankers and commercial vessels continuing. Professor Guda, how serious is the threat now to global oil flows and energy markets?
I'm sorry to say this, but I have to say that it's very serious, and the worst is yet to come, unfortunately. I say it, well, I am really sad, but this is what we're going to witness, all of us. And when we are saying all of us here, we're saying everybody around the world. Even if the war stops today, we have a shortage of supply. We already have many ships are not able to leave Strait of Hormuz. All of us are going to be affected by this, and this oil price is also not only going to be affected on the fuel price, but it's going to affect everything actually. Also, I think all economists share one very big concern about the idea of volatility. We really don't like the idea of volatility, and we really don't like the idea of instability. And what's happening now, it's making us all unable to figure out what we're going to happen tomorrow morning. I mean, for instance, President Trump can declare victory in the next few hours or next few weeks. Nobody can know. So it's very, very hard, and it makes our job very, very hard to figure out what's going to happen. But I think if I can talk about Korean case, I think we will have to really, brace ourselves. I hope things do not escalate further and further. But I mean, the problem is that we are witnessing more escalation as we have witnessed, as Professor Ko have also mentioned. Larijani has been, killed in the last few hours. So I think we're going to see even more escalation on the terms of Iran and Israel and so on.
Right. So this level of growing uncertainty, it's definitely dealing a big blow, not only to neighboring countries, but also to other countries in major economies across the world. And in a related move, a striking move rather, President Trump has urged countries, including South Korea, Japan, the UK, France, and China, to send warships to help secure the Strait of Hormuz. But as for now, most have responded very cautiously. Professor Gu, why are so many governments still reluctant to step in directly?
Yes, President Trump's call for allied nations to deploy warship to the Strait of Hormuz sounds straightforward and on the surface. But the reluctance we are seeing from the South Korea, not only South Korea, Japan, and the UK, France, and even China, reflects a very calculated caution. And I think that caution is well-founded because we need to be honest about the origin of this conflict. This is a war that was initiated by decision made in Washington and Tel Aviv. Other nations, particularly those in Asia, East Asia, did not start this, and they should think very carefully before allowing themselves to be pulled into it, militarily. For South Korea, specifically, this calculation is especially delicate. Yes, the alliance with the United States matters deeply, and Seoul cannot simply ignore the Washington's request. But South Korea also has a long history with Iran, decades of trade, economic cooperations, and cultural exchanges. So these strong ties are also not trivial. So they represent relationship built over many years, and they carry real weight in how Seoul should approach this situation. So we should be very, very careful. So picking a visible military side carries a real economic and diplomatic cost. And then there is the question about what securing the strait actually means in practice. Is this a defensive, the escort mission, or could it draw participating navies into direct confrontation with Iran? So that ambiguity alone is enough to make most government, poses. So I think the reluctance is not weakness. It is governments, carefully weighing the alliance, obligations against the very real risk of being pulled into a war that is still far from over. So South Korea, position should be clear. Support for stability and the protection of the shipping lines, yes, but not as participant in someone else's war.
A very clear way that you've put it,
Yeah.
Professor Koo, a calculated caution we are seeing right now from the South Korean government. Now, this also raises a question for major energy exporters. Professor Guda, how are countries calculating that trade-off right now? Do the economic risks of disruption still seem more manageable than the strategic risks of direct involvement?
Kim, you mentioned one of the magic words of economics, the idea of trade-off. This is a very important idea for all policymakers, and I think for all of us also, for our economic choices. The idea that we have a trade-off between economic cost and security risk. If we are talking about major energy importers, including South Korea and Japan and so on, of course, they are trading over a very thin line, because from the one hand, we are talking about here strategic oil reserves. We are talking about, all the supply chain. It's becoming very fragile right now. We don't want to have more inflation. The currency is also might suffer, although up to now it's still a little bit holding up itself. So there are many economic costs to not getting involved. Also, I don't think that any external party want to get involved in this ongoing conflict. So this is on the one part. On the other part, well, as Professor Koo have mentioned, South Korea has a long relationship with Iran, but also has a long and very close relationship with the Middle East countries, with UAE, with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, and so on. And they are under attack right now. So I think from the one hand, as a guy who's also involved with the Arab news, and I'm watching Arab news and commentator on this, I can see that there are some concerns from Arab parties that maybe they want Korea to get more involved and so on. But I think it's a very serious situation and very dangerous situation. So I think Korea, as Professor Koo mentioned, they have to trade very carefully about the next steps. They have to calculate the trade-off of getting involved and not getting involved in a very serious manner. The good news, if I can end with something, optimist, is that Korea is a land of or society of institutions. The government has many institutions. We have parliament and so on. So I think the decision making at the end of the day will pass through many layers, and more or less we're going to have a good decision making at the end of the day. I just hope so.
Definitely. So like Professor Good has mentioned, it seems as though expectations are quite high regarding South Korea's next move. Then Professor Koo, what do you think Seoul should be weighing most carefully right now?
So it is very, very difficult time. So I think the South Korea finds itself in a very difficult position. And the government's response so far tells us a great deal about how Seoul is navigating this. So what we are seeing right now is a clear case of we said that strategic ambiguity. So South Korea has not said yes, and it has not said no. So presidential, office has called for, adequate, time for deliberation. So it means that we need time to think over, and we need time to organize, some kind of, deliberation. So the defense minister has noted that any worship, deployment would require National Assembly approval. So it means that the foreign minister and also the foreign minister declined to confirm whether Washington has even made a formal request. It means that they did not, made us a formal request. So this is, deliberated and it is calculated. So we have to think over and over. And on one side, the alliance with the United States is, the cornerstone of South Korea's security, especially given the ongoing threat from the North Korea. So Seoul cannot afford to simply dismiss, Washington's concerns. And practically speaking, the South Korea imports about 70% of the oil from the Middle East. So the Strait of Hormuz matters enormously to this economy. But on the other side, South Korea has a long history. Again, I can say that South Korea has a long history with Iran. So deploying warship into active conflict, John, against a country with whom you have that kind of history is not neutral act. So we should be very, very careful. And there is also meaningful distinction between showing solidarity and taking ownership of someone else's work. So it is actual work. So we don't need to participate someone's work. So my view is that South Korea's widest path is active diplomacy, not military engagement.
Right. So let's hope we'll hope to see a wise decision from the South Korean authorities regarding any military moving forward. But against that backdrop, Professor Koo, we've been hearing this week that President Trump is now signaling stronger round of attacks in this week. What would that tell us about America's objectives at this point? And is Washington trying to force Iran back into the table?
The contradictory signals we have hearing are not accidental. They are, deliberated, and they itself tell us a great deal about where we are diplomatically. When Iran says it has not asked for a, ceasefire, and Trump says Iran wants talks, but it isn't ready. So it means that both statements can actually be true at the same time. Neither side wants to appear weak by publicly asking for negotiation. So first, so both sides speak loudly in public. So it can be kind of political propaganda. So why quietly living drops open in private. So fundamental problem is this. All three parties, the United States, Israel, and Iran, need a justification to end the war. So right now they cannot find the right justification to end the war. So not just a ceasefire, but narrative. So something they can bring home to their own people, say, yes, we achieved something. And so this is not, in vain. So each side is actually actively, searching for their, justification right now, and until each finds it, fighting, continues. So Iran has, lost its supreme leader and much of its leadership. So accepting, the ceasefire without clear narratives of resistance would not like, complete, surrenders. So Israel also needs to define what victory actually means. And Trump also, needs, moment he can, frame as a win. A deal, declaration, and, something. So that's why it is very, very difficult to see, to summon, first, the announced, like a ceasefire.
Right, so it could be kind of a strategic messaging we're seeing. But as we see this kinds of escalation, the message of escalation, Professor Gouda, then what do you think will be the key points to watch most closely on in the coming days to determine what direction is this war heading to?
I think we have to watch for several things. First of all, we have to watch for the leadership dynamics inside Iran. I mean, now with the supreme leader more or less, vanishing, Mujtaba Khamenei is not really clear whether he's still alive or not. There is no clear indication about that. The senior figures have been killed. So this is also, it adds to the dilemma, about who's running the show in Iran and who will take this decision to have negotiations or to stop the escalation. So inside Iran, there is lots of I would say lots of equations that are happening. It needs to be clear. Also, we have to be clear about people's choice. Now, the head of the Basij, this is more or less the internal security apparatus, has been killed as well this morning. So we can also, perhaps we can have more or less some sort of a public outcry and a public movement inside Iran. So we have to watch for this. Definitely, we have to watch for Trump and Netanyahu's end game, which is not really clear because, of course, I think mainly Netanyahu is winning a lot in these days. He's really reshaping the Middle East to his own happiness, to his own benefit, definitely. We have also to watch for U.S.-China strategic dimension. The upcoming or recently delayed U.S.-China summit is extremely important also. I think this is a very important point. And at the end of the day, we have to watch for the economy. If the economy is failing, if the global economy is suffering, I think all this conflict has to be seized sooner or later. I think this is a very important point. Economics is what's ruling everything at the end of the day.
Right. As we've been discussing today, there are a lot of economic, diplomatic, and military changes we're seeing day by day in a timeline. So we will have to keep close eyes on the latest developments and hope for an early end to this situation. But as for now, we'll have to leave our discussion right here. Thank you so much for your insights, Professor Gouda.
Thank you so much.
And of course, Professor Koo, we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.